In the shadowed recesses of medieval history lies a darkness so profound that it often eludes the understanding of contemporary minds, particularly when considering the depth of cruelty that human beings can enact upon one another. When we conjure images of torture from the Middle Ages, we typically envision dank dungeons and gruesome public executions. Yet among the horrors of this epoch existed a chilling category of torture devices, specifically designed to enact a systematic form of cruelty against women. These instruments were not mere tools of punishment. They were insidious weapons of control, meticulously crafted to dismantle dignity, voice, and ultimately the very humanity of their victims. The terror invoked by these devices was far from incidental. It was a calculated brutality, targeting what the medieval patriarchy deemed most threatening in women: their bodies, their voices, and their defiance. The horrifying reality of these instruments lies not only in their physical brutality, but also in the profound psychological warfare they represented. Designed for prolonged suffering rather than swift execution, they inflicted public humiliation and aimed to annihilate a woman's identity. Each device tells a harrowing tale of a society so threatened by female power that it engineered elaborate mechanisms to crush it. These tools were not products of momentary rage or battlefield necessity. They embodied a systematic misogyny, a cold and calculated approach to enforcing control that was rooted in institutional hatred. The medieval world was a landscape in which a woman's worth was rigidly measured by her silence, obedience, and adherence to impossible standards of purity and submission. Those who dared to challenge authority, speak out, or exist outside the narrow confines of societal norms faced repercussions that in many ways defy modern comprehension. The instruments crafted for their punishment reveal a society that was willing to devote considerable time, sources, and craftsmanship to the art of female suffering. What is perhaps most disturbing is the realization that these instruments were frequently wielded not by foreign invaders or rogue elements, but by the very communities, families, and authorities that were meant to protect these women. Husbands ordered their wives into iron corsets. Fathers sanctioned the bridling of their daughters. And entire communities gathered to witness the public spectacle of female agony. This systematic approach to maintaining social order through terror underscores the pervasive nature of this cruelty. As we unearth these instruments of torment, we must remain aware that behind each device lies a multitude of untold stories of women who suffered and perished, often for transgressions as simple as speaking too loudly, loving the wrong person, or refusing to accept their prescribed place in the social hierarchy. Their screams resonate through history, serving as a haunting reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty. When power feels threatened by those it seeks to control, the breast ripper, the pair of anguish, the iron corset, and the scold's bridled leech name bears the weight of centuries of suffering inflicted upon real women, whose only crime was existing in a world that perceived their very identities as a challenge to the established order. Today, as we delve into this dark chapter of human history, our aim is not to sensationalize the suffering of the past, but to illuminate how easily civilization can disguise barbarism under the guise of morality and justice. Those who used these instruments did not see them as tools of evil. Rather, they were regarded as necessary measures for social controls, sanctioned by law and blessed by authorities. The true horror lies not only in the physical pain these instruments inflicted, but in the insidious manner in which they were designed to erase the very essence of womanhood, targeting aspects of speech, sexuality, motherhood, and identity with unerring precision. This left in their wake not just scarred bodies, but shattered spirits, serving as living warnings to other women who might dare to step outside the lines drawn by a society terrified of female power. The medieval period, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th century, was characterized by a precarious balance between reverence and revulsion toward women. While the Virgin Mary was worshipped as the epitome of feminine virtue, real women navigated a society that viewed them as inherently dangerous, susceptible to sin, and constantly in need of control. The Christian Church, which dominated medieval thought, propagated the belief that women were the spiritual descendants of Eve, forever stained by original sin and culpable for mankind is fall from grace. This theological underpinning fostered a culture in which women were simultaneously indispensable and expendable. valued for their roles as reproducers and caretakers. Yet perceived as potential destabilizers of societal order, the feudal system that governed this landscape further entrenched layers of oppression. In a hierarchy governed by the flow of power from kings to lords to peasants, women were positioned at the lowest rungs of every social ladder. A noblewoman might wield influence through her male relatives, yet she possessed no independent legal standing. A peasant woman was likened to livestock. Her value was gauged primarily by her labor and reproductive capacity, with scant regard for her rights or autonomy. Legal frameworks of the time mirrored these misogynistic attitudes, starkly exemplified by the doctrine of coverture under English common law, which rendered a married woman an nonentity in the eyes of the law, an extension of her husband's property devoid of rights to land ownership, legal contracts, or even custody of her children. Compounding this plight was the perilous perception of female sexuality. While men's sexual desires were often rationalized as natural, women's sexuality was viewed as a deleterious force threatening the moral fabric of society. The medieval church taught that women's bodies were vessels of temptation, luring men away from spiritual purity. Such beliefs created an environment where any expression of female sexuality, whether consensual or not, could become grounds for brutal punishment. Economic conditions further intensified these oppressive dynamics. In times of scarcity prevalent during this era, women were frequently scapegoated for societal woes. Failed harvests, disease outbreaks, and economic downturns were often attributed to women, who were seen to have disrupted the natural order through their behaviors or mere existence. Despite the emergence of urban centers in the later medieval period leading to new economic opportunities for women, their newfound independence was perceived as a threat to established power dynamics. Women working as merchants or craftsmen occasionally achieved a degree of economic autonomy, yet guild systems often restricted their participation. As urban authorities developed increasingly sophisticated methods to monitor and control female behavior, the medieval era simultaneously witnessed the codification of misogyny into law, custom, and religious doctrine. What had once operated as informal systems of male dominance became institutionalized through legal codes and church teachings that masked the systemic oppression of women with the facade of divine sanction. The breast ripper exemplifies one of the most psychologically devastating instruments of medieval torture. A horrific paradox, this device transformed the very symbol of nurturing and motherhood into an instrument of unimaginable agony. Comprised of 4 sharp iron claws affixed to a handle, the breast ripper was designed to inflict maximum pain while minimizing the chance of immediate death, typically heated until red hot before use. The instrument inflicted not only physical trauma, but also the torment of burning flesh. This device was employed methodically against women accused of adultery, abortion, or other offenses against their roles as mothers and nurturers. In the cultural consciousness of medieval society, a woman's breasts were more than anatomical features. They were emblematic of her primary function as a life-giver and nurturer. To mutilate them was to assault the very essence of her worth. The public nature of this torture significantly amplified its psychological impact. Executions were executed in town squares or bustling marketplaces, allowing the largest possible audience to witness the spectacle. The condemned woman would be stripped to the waist and restrained as the executioner heated the iron claws over a brazier. For the crowd, the anticipation of the impending violence was part of the unfolding horror. Heightening the psychological torment long before the metal made contact with flesh, historical records embody the systematic nature of this torture. In Nuremberg, 15th century city records detail the use of breast rippers on women convicted of infanticide, noting that torture continued until the victim confessed to additional crimes or named alleged accomplices. Many women, tortured beyond imagination, confessed to anything names of neighbors, relatives, or complete strangers out of desperation to escape the agonizing ordeal. The symbolic significance of this horrific torture cannot be overstated. By specifically targeting the breasts, medieval authorities sent a clear message to women who transgressed societal boundaries. Those who failed in their roles as mothers, who committed adultery or challenged sexual morality, would face a complete annihilation of their capacity for motherhood. Survivors of breast ripper torture, if fortunate enough to endure the initial onslaught, faced lifetimes of anguish and disfigurement. their deep wounds often became infected, leading to prolonged suffering or death long after the initial torment. For those who lived, visible scars served as permanent reminders of the horrific consequences awaiting women who dared to step outside the boundaries imposed by society. The terror resonated through medieval communities, as women lived with the knowledge that their bodies could be legally and brutally mutilated for the most minor breaches of established norms. Mothers, nursing their children, bore the constant fear that the very act of nurturing could become an accusation against them if they were ever suspected of wrongdoing regarding motherhood or sexual morality. Medical knowledge during this era exacerbated the horrors of breast ripper torture. Medieval physicians had little understanding of infection control or effective pain management. Victims underwent such horrific torture without anesthesia, antiseptics, or appropriate medical care. The wounds were often neglected or treated with substances that further increased the risk of infection and fatality. The pear of anguish represents a particularly insidious form of medieval torture, aimed at women, a device deceptively small and innocuous in appearance, yet capable of inflicting terror and suffering in profound ways. This instrument consisted of a pear-shaped metal bulb with spring-loaded segments, expandable by a screw mechanism, deceptively introduced into a victim's body cavity. The device's expansion would cause internal tearing and crushing, often lasting for hours, while leaving little visible evidence of the torment. Its ability to inflict tremendous internal damage, while maintaining an external facade of relative normalcy, made the pear of anguish especially sinister. Medieval authorities could mercilessly torture a woman in this manner and still present her publicly, concealing the horror of her suffering beneath her skin and maintaining the illusion that their justice system was civilized and restrained. Yet inside, the agony was profound and relentless, exacerbated by the psychological torture inflicted before the device was even used. Victims were shown the pear in its harmless closed position, before the mechanistic horror of its true capacity was revealed. Often this revelation was sufficient to elicit confessions before the actual torture commenced. Historical accounts document the extensive and harrowing application of the pear of anguish. A Spanish Inquisition trial from Toledo recounts its excruciating use on a woman accused of Jewish practices, detailing how the torture lasted 3 agonizing hours while she steadfastly maintained her innocence. Ultimately, only when the device was expanded to its maximum capacity did she confess, although by then, the internal injuries inflicted were so catastrophic that she died shortly thereafter. The enduring impact of pear of anguish torture was designed to extend far beyond the immediate session of pain. Women who survived faced the aftermath of permanent internal injuries, rendering normal bodily functions painful, if not completely impossible. Many would endure incontinence, forced to grapple with ongoing humiliation and punishment long after the torture had ceased. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.